Assassin champions are some of the hardest champions in the game to balance. Due to having little to no utility in exchange for the highest burst damage in the game, assassins fall into the category of high risk, high reward, and only really change when they're broken. Champion risk and reward is a fundamental part of any champion, but assassins especially, because the risk is too high with the reward being too low, you end up with pre-rework Pantheon who just fell off harder than a box of osmium into the Mariana Trench. That's the densest material on the Earth, by the way. However, if the risk is too low with the reward being too high, you end up with Katarina who could be played by a walrus clapping its fins against the keyboard and still get a penta. The majority of the risk that is associated with an assassin champion is the fact that they're squishy, offer little to no utility, are only really there to deal damage, and oftentimes require high mechanical skill to pull off effectively. Knowing all of these things about assassins, why would Riot decide to make one that is so simple and scales incredibly? To say Naafiri is the easiest assassin in the game would really only be true if Katarina was removed from the game, but she's still one of the simplest choices for most people. She has amazing wave clear, great damage and scaling, a dash that does damage and has a low cooldown, a targeted dash that follows opponents just about everywhere, and an ultimate that just makes everything she does already 10 times better. And to be honest, she's also a blast. This champion is incredibly fun to play, and every part of her kit feels good as if they were all meant to work together properly and were made for each other, unlike some other champions that just get random things tossed in because why not? Also, why'd they have to give her so much ass? I mean, hey, yo!
What the dog doing?
Moving on from me being a furry, Naafiri is genuinely a breath of fresh air due to her design and gameplay feeling so nice to combo together, us finally getting a non-humanoid monster champion after so long, and having an assassin champion that feels like there's counterplay even if she has a very low skill floor compared to other assassins. Of course though, as with every other assassin, Naafiri does some insane damage. Even just using 2 abilities, she can mostly destroy squishy characters due to them being impossible to miss, and her ultimate being the perfect stat boost for any assassin. For assassins, the best thing that they can get is just more stats that just help them assassinate their target, and her ult does that in spades, making her already good base kit just that much more of a threat. Combine all of that with the fact that the majority of her damage is AoE, and you have a perfect storm for a champion that will cause problems in any game she's a part of. And while I won't say she's broken yet, she definitely feels like she could get there with the right combination of items that I just haven't explored yet. So join me as I explain the absurdity of this champion and the honest truth about Naafiri, the Hound of 100 Bites.
Death from 1,000 bites.
I'm going to assume that you at least know what Darkin are, because if you don't, then a lot of this stuff isn't going to make sense, but in case you've been living under a rock for the past 10 years and it's been a while since the last Darkin release, here's a brief summary. All of the Darkin we know today used to be ascended god warriors of Shurima who were corrupted during their fight against the Void that Acacia released during their war with Shurima. A while after all of that wonderful stuff, and the Darkin were sealed away by Zoe and put into weapons and sealed away to hopefully never be seen again. However, as we all know, that certainly hasn't lasted forever, and Darkin are slowly finding hosts whose bodies they infest in order to once again live within Runeterra. Naafiri is no different, having spent centuries in a crypt in Shurima, unable to do anything but reflect on her time when she did have a body. Naafiri was, or at least believes herself to be, the strongest of the Darkin, and believes she could have ruled the Darkin as she could have easily bested any of them in combat. But now she simply lives inside of an ancient throwing dagger thanks to Zoe. So there she laid in her crypt, hoping for a new vessel, just someone to touch her and be corrupted by the Darkin magic. Soon enough, the doors to her tomb opened and in walked a human who Naafiri believed to be her new vessel. But this particular human knew about the magic of the Darkin and wrapped up Naafiri's blade in an iron-lined cloth and took care not to touch the blade whatsoever. So was that it? Was she just going to be doomed to this life of being nothing more than a blade for all of eternity? No. She took a gamble and attempted to call forth a pack of Dune Hounds, hoping to bring them to this human as their new prey and have him touch the blade in the resulting panic from the pack. However, he gripped the blade as tightly as he could and kept making sure he did not touch it with his actual skin as he pulled out his own blade. Soon enough, the man and his horse were nothing more than prey for the pack of Dune Hounds. After the attack, Naafiri awoke for the first time in centuries. She could breathe in the dry desert air, she could taste the metallic blood on her jaws, and she slowly realized that she could see each of the dogs as if from the eyes of every packmate. She felt her sense of self shatter as she had become the hounds, not just one of them, but every single one of them, the entirety of the pack. In time, Naafiri slowly grew to accept her new role, understanding that alone, a single one of the hounds would starve, but together, as a pack, they thrived and were able to hunt almost anything as their prey. Now, Naafiri has set out to find the other Darkin, realizing that the personal grudges and petty agendas that tore them apart ultimately led them away from being the regnant killers of Runeterra, but she would open their eyes to the wisdom of the pack. I always love stories of characters losing their sense of self in some way and or having to deal with a situation that is incredibly unfavorable to them but that they have to make the best of. It's also incredibly interesting to have a Darkin character whose body is technically so many different bodies, and it gives a whole new light that they can approach for future Darkin champions in their form. Overall, I like it, and especially like what it implies for the future stories of the Darkin and the future of Runeterra after Naafiri has potentially united all the Darkin, so I rated a solid 12 of what the dog doings out of 14. Naafiri's passive is We Are More. Naafiri spawns pack mates around her periodically up to a maximum of 2 or 3 based on her level. The cooldown of pack mate spawning can be reduced by hitting enemy champions or large monsters with abilities or killing any unit. Pack mates attack whatever unit Naafiri is attacking and do slightly more damage on their next basic attack after Naafiri casts an ability. They also dash to enemy targets that Naafiri's basic attacks hit or that her abilities hit. In addition, she spawns her maximum number of pack mates upon respawning. These guys are alright, but they're not pack mates, they're goons, and even though the damage that they do from auto-attacking isn't all that great, you'll definitely notice when you don't have them, as they're incredibly great for dealing with skill shots that could hit you, increasing your W damage, and just for providing a little extra damage on the targets at range that you can't get to at the moment due to their long-range dash. They also help in the early game if you take first strike, getting you a little bit of extra poke damage on your enemy laner when you hit abilities and getting you some more early gold. Combine all of that with a relatively low cooldown to respawn as long as you're hitting your abilities and are never really going to be seen without the maximum number of them for very long. Your goons are kind of like side characters in any TV show or movie. They're certainly not the main focus and they provide just enough to make the story interesting, but you're really not going to be too sad if one of them dies because another will be there to take its place in a matter of seconds. Naafiri's Q is Darkin Daggers. Naafiri shoots at a dagger in a target direction, doing damage and inflicting all enemies hit with a bleed for a short duration. Naafiri can then recast his ability within a short duration. If she hits a target that is already bleeding from this ability, she does the remainder of the bleed damage immediately, then does a massive amount of physical damage that gets increased based on the target's missing health. This is your main damage ability, and if you fuck it up, then you're never going to be sinking your teeth into that child's flesh. This ability also has insane scaling, as if you hit both parts, you can do anywhere from 170 to 240% of your bonus AD. This ability is also super nice for wave clear, as even as early as level 5, you can really make the minion wave disappear once it gets close enough, which makes getting a Ravenous Hydra that much nicer on her due to the bonus AD and wave clear giving you plenty of time to roam. If you really want to kick it up a notch, you can also take Minion Dematerializer and be able to really start one-shotting the non-cannon waves. It does incredible damage to high health and high armor champions due to the bleed being great to apply Black Cleaver stacks, and the missing health bonus means your extra AD just shreds people. Just make sure you hit this ability or else you can go from being a dog named Cupcake to a dog named Destroyer. Man, how many Pitbull jokes can I fit into this video? Mr. Worldwide, Mr. 305, Dale. Naafiri's W is Hound's Pursuit. This ability is the one that a lot of people meme about because it's the ultimate, wow, that enemy ADC was so out of position there. Naafiri targets an enemy champion and channels for a short duration, gaining sight of that champion throughout the channel. After it's completed, her and all of her goons dash to the targeted enemy. Her and each of her goons deal their own damage and stop upon the first enemy champion hit, slowing the target that Naafiri hits for a short duration, with each hit from both Naafiri and each of her goons doing their own instance of damage. During the channel, Naafiri's goons are untargetable. Even though it's incredibly good for getting onto a target, this ability also has a fair bit of downsides. You can't stop the channel once it's started, so you better be sure about who you're going in on. The dash can be stopped by someone standing in front of your target, so like Caitlyn ult, a good friend can really mess up your play. It's incredibly telegraphed as an ability, and if you cast it at max range, the enemy has like 10 years to react to it. And finally, you have to follow the enemy champion just about anywhere, meaning that if they want to take you under turret, that's where you're fucking going. However, even with all those downsides, it's still an incredibly good ability if you get it onto the target that you want, because there's no way for them to escape from you getting directly on top of them no matter how far away they go during the dash. Due to this, it sets up very nicely for her other abilities, and due to it having increased damage through her goons actually means that the damage can get stupidly high, especially during her ultimate, but we'll get there when we get there. Naafiri's E is Eviscerate, and as you probably imagine by the name alone, this ability allows Naafiri to unlock the innate Pitbull ability to throw cinder blocks at people and turn them into nothing but a fine red paste. Naafiri dashes in a target direction and then lands in a flurry of blades, dealing physical damage on both the dash and the landing. During the dash, all of her goons disappear from wherever they are and reappear near Naafiri after the dash is finished while being healed back to full health. This ability is super simple, but it's also super good as the dash can get through most walls. With enough ability haste, the ability has a super low cooldown and costs nearly no mana, and if you hit both sides of the dash, the damage numbers are just insane. 170% bonus AD physical damage simply for hitting something at point blank range right after your W. It is insane how great of an ability this is for how simple of an ability it is. Need to get back to the lane faster? E. Need to deal a good amount of damage? E. Need to help clear the wave early? E. Need to rip and tear until it is done? E. It's great, and that's about it. Who's a good dog? Who's a good girl? You are. That's right, you are. Naafiri's ultimate is the Call of the Pack, and this is where Naafiri gets to mercilessly enjoy the flesh of young children. Passively, this ability increases the cast range of Naafiri's W, which is pretty nice as it gets a lot of bonus range as you level up this ability. Actively, Naafiri despawns all of her active goons and then summons the maximum number of goons she can have plus a few extra. She then gets decaying bonus movement speed for the next few seconds that is doubled while out of combat, and reveals vision in an incredibly huge area around her for a few seconds, and reveals all enemy champions for a few seconds longer. For the next 15 seconds, that's right, 15 seconds, Naafiri gains bonus AD that is based off of her total AD, increases all of her goons' max health by 25%, reduces the cooldown of her passive by 50%, and her first basic attack or ability that hits an enemy champion grants her a shield based on her AD. Finally, as if everything before wasn't already enough of a stat boost, and makes her one-shot potential to a whole team that much more devastating, the first takedown that she gets on an enemy champion during the duration of her ultimate refreshes the duration of her insane stat and goon boost, restores all of her goons to full health, and then grants her the same shield again. And even for all of the bullshit this ability already offers to Naafiri, I love this ability so much. It just ties her kit together so well as it actually addresses some of the problems she has really well. It gets rid of her goons being so sporadic and when they spawn, because it reduces the cooldown of them spawning to a point where hitting one ability on an enemy champion spawns another goon, and it makes them tankier so they don't have to spawn in as often. It gives her major engage in her W longer range, meaning it's easier for her to get to the target that she wants, and it gives her so much fucking vision and movement speed that it makes it so getting in range to use her W is not going to be hard. It also gives her more bonus AD, which is super necessary because all of her abilities outside of her ultimate's AD buff are based entirely off of her bonus AD with no base or total AD scaling on anything. A good ultimate either ties the kit of a champion together or makes everything that the champion wants to do just that much better, and Naafiri's ultimate does that in spades. Just be careful asking who let the dogs out, because all of them want to eat your face. So, is Naafiri good? Her design and kit are wonderful, and having a low skill cap champion, especially when it's an assassin, is honestly something that really helps newer players get into that role. She also feels like one of the assassins that isn't really feast or famine due to her kit being a lot easier. Due to her healing and shielding and mobility, tanks and CC don't shut her down as hard as other assassins, but it still does take its toll. Overall, she's definitely a fun pick, and once you have a few games under your belt with her, she starts coming together really nicely. What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? My name is TheTarians, and I hope you enjoyed the honest truth about Naafiri. If you did, go leave a comment down below telling me who you think I should do an honest truth about next, and while you're down there, go hit that subscribe button to be updated when any of my new videos comes out, and I will see you all next time. Bye bye!